Hello, everyone. Like Josh mentioned, my name is Matthew Gessler. I am the Director of User Experience here at Radiant Digital. Thank you for joining me for this discussion on how atomic design is revolutionizing enterprise UX. Here at Radiant, we specialize in technology solutions driven by proven methodologies to help navigate the journey to the digital enterprise. Before I start, I just wanted to say that during the midst of a global pandemic and the justified civil unrest, I really hope this session provides you some respite. I know it's been a difficult couple of weeks for me personally, see what's going on in the world. And I hope this just offers a little break for everyone. Typically when I give this presentation at organizations, it usually runs about 30 minutes. But there's always a ton of questions at the end. So what I've done is cut this down to roughly about 17 to 18 minutes to make sure we can accommodate all of your questions at the end of the presentation. So with that, let's jump right into it. So just a quick overview about what we'll be discussing today. First, I'll walk you through quickly what atomic design is. Then we'll get into the issues that we typically see in enterprise applications. Then we'll get into applying atomic design in an enterprise environment. And lastly, the benefits derived. So atomic design is a methodology for creating design systems created by Brad Frost in 2013. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. 7 years ago is an eternity in the design/technology space. But the example I always refer to is Jacob Nielsen and Rolf Mollick created the 10 usability heuristics for user interface design in 1990. And those are still completely relevant today. Personally, I think atomic design did not and has not gotten the attention it deserves, especially in the enterprise UX space. But hopefully these types of conversations will change that. Now let's get into a breakdown of atomic design. There are 5 distinct levels: atoms, molecules, organisms, templates, and pages. So if you aren't familiar with atomic design, I would encourage you to Google Brad Frost atomic design. He has an excellent blog post outlining it. I'm not going to get too deep into the definition here, as you could read his, Brad Frost's own description. But here's a quick summary. So atoms are your basic building blocks. These are items which cannot be broken down any further. So an example of this would be a button or a label, an image. Molecules are when you combine 2 atoms together. So if you strung together a label with its input, that's a molecule. Organisms are then formed when you combine multiple molecules. And lastly, templates are formed using any combination, really, of organisms, molecules, and atoms. And the only difference then between pages and templates are pages are really just templates with real content. So with that, let's get into an actual example. Now, this is something that actually Brad Frost did. And mind you, the slide itself is a little dated. You could tell by the styling on the Instagram pieces here. But if we look at each individual silo, starting with our atoms, you'll notice we have our icons, our labels, your handle name, an image, things along those nature. These are items we cannot break down any further. As we start to string these atoms together, we create our molecules. So the combination of your image profile, your handle, last time active, all of that together forms a molecule. As we start stringing together molecules, we form our organisms. So kind of looking at an entire post piece, that would be an organism. Putting all of this together forms our template. And again, the only difference between a template and a page is real data. So As Radiant Digital is a consulting company, when we step into an engagement with an organization, we typically see the same issues in most enterprises. Associates might use 2, 3, 4, even 5 different applications throughout the course of a day. As they bounce from system to system, they might see different interfaces, interaction patterns, etc. This disjointedness leads to higher learning curves, higher time on task, more errors, and more rework. In turn, your costs go up while your associate's satisfaction drops. When associate satisfaction drops, this can lead to turnover. And anytime there is turnover, it costs you, both in the time and money it takes to recruit, interview, hire, and train a new staffer. The reasons for why these internal systems might look and function differently vary. Different teams or business divisions might have worked on them. Maybe it was a legacy application from an acquired company. Maybe different technologies were employed. Maybe brand guidelines have changed or been updated. Regardless of the reason why, design inconsistencies cost money. At a high level, atomic design and enterprise user experience aids in achieving 3 major points. First, it quells the systemic issues I spoke about earlier. For example, there's different teams working on different applications, different technologies deployed, changes to the brand, mainly by having a centralized modular design file which all design resources can access. Second, the centralized design enables a better development environment which can utilize reusable code. This not only ensures better alignment between design and development, but also reduces development lift. Third, it allows you to work faster while at the same time creating continuity across your internal applications. So with that, let's try to jump into the benefits. So jumping into our benefits, the first item we see is allowing a new resource to get working quickly. Now, we've seen this firsthand at Radiant Digital. A new designer starts and we want them to get to work working right away and not spend weeks learning about the client. By having an atomic design library set, they can quickly jump in and work on solutions rather than working on creating a design. Next, we have easily learned the design patterns and brand guidelines. So having the ability to pull atoms, molecules, organisms, templates immediately helps designers to promptly deliver results. In addition, the structure of the design system allows them to quickly learn the design patterns and the brand guidelines. So having atomic elements before you create applications means you can mock up pages quickly and easily. All that is required is to pick and combine the required elements from the library. The process eliminates decision fatigue and allows our designers to focus on solutions and not the components. When you don't have to design every component from scratch, it greatly speeds up the process, right? That's just common sense. There is no need to reinvent the wheel every time. What we have seen is our design cycle times have gone from 5 to 10 days down to 1 to 3. So that was a huge savings for us. So by having a centralized design library, if an organization's brand guidelines change, for example, a primary button goes from black to blue, we can quickly update the necessary atoms and push those changes to all other atomic elements. That means a simple change to one atom gets cascaded to all the molecules, organisms, and templates where it resides. In addition, this process ensures design artifacts remain relevant. How many times have you looked at an older design file and it was out of sync with your current guidelines? I've seen this personally countless times in my career where older deliverables are out of date or maybe don't match what's in production. And let's say we wanted to extend the design of this out-of-date file. We're going to have to make updates to the base file first. With our atomic design system, we can easily push these changes to all our design files. This is a huge time saver as we don't have to retroactively update our assets one file or even one component at a time. So when all your designers are working from the same library, you create consistency in your applications, development, and most importantly, your user experience. Your users will have expected interaction patterns across all their applications that they use throughout the day, helping them work faster and smarter. What we've seen at Radiant Digital, when we help clients move to a singular consistent design, time on task has been reduced by over 60%. Now think about that savings across an entire organization. This is a huge, huge cost saver. If an application is created according to atomic design principles from the onset, all the atomic design components that are created before the application is built can serve as a basic style guide. So we're able to create a style or design guide probably in a quarter of the time what we've been able to do in the past. With tools like Envision Design System Manager or Zeppelin, it's easy to document and export these components out and allows stakeholders, designers, and developers to easily inspect these elements. So one issue I've seen throughout my career is development doesn't always execute 100% on a design. Minor issues like the padding or alignment is off is pretty common. With atomic design, since you are using predefined components to create the application layout, reuse is extremely high. This reduces the overall strain on development teams. They can quickly develop your atoms, molecules, organisms, and templates into reusable components and then apply throughout the application. In addition, tools like Storybook, which showcase development code, can be synced with design tools, again, such as Envision Design System Manager or Zeppelin, so that when my design team makes an update, it can be propagated out to our developers. This practice has increased our development accuracy tremendously and reduced the amount of visual QA needed. By developing reusable components, our development cycle time has gone from weeks to days. So, in conclusion, first, remember, it's a journey. The work is never done. The design will consistently evolve as users' mental models change and business goals progress. Whether you're starting fresh or trying to reorganize your current components, order is important. By defining your components under atomic design, this makes things modular and manageable so you can continue to grow and enhance. Next, focus on your tasks, not how to get them done. By having a set design system, you allow your designers to focus on distilling solutions and not sitting there creating design items. I've mentioned how this helps lower your design cycle time, but it also helps foster innovation based on use case need rather than feature fixation. Lastly, maintaining a design system is hard. Don't make it harder. It requires dedicated resources to manage your design system, to make updates due to software upgrades, new component requests, etc. Make it easy to maintain with an atomic system, which allows you to grow without becoming unruly. In addition, leveraging technology to ensure changes can be easily pushed to your design team. So with that, wow, I made it in a couple minutes early. um, I'd like to open it up to any questions anyone might have.
Well, thank you, Matt. All right, well, let's go ahead and open up the lines for questions now. Please use the raise your hand function to ask a question. Just be sure to unmute your microphone, or you can just simply type your question into the chat. Looks like we have a couple questions in the chat already. Let's start with one of those, and then we'll get to Ricardo next. Typically, how long does it take to set up, create an atomic design system?
So I hate to give you a UX answer, but it really does depend. And why I say that is we've gone into organizations that say might have a very defined brand guideline, and we know what we need to do and how we attack it. Or maybe they have certain components already made and we're just organizing them to help them manage it. So if, say you were starting fresh, it would take probably a couple of months to get all your components defined and that initial MVP setup. But it could be as short as a couple of weeks.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's take a question from Ricardo.
Hey, Matt, thanks for that.
Yeah, hey, Ricardo.
So I see atomic design, it's a way of organizing yourself when you're working on this subtask, and I think it makes perfect sense. Now, when you're trying to map UX as to, for instance, engineering systems, let's say I'm an engineer and I go to a certain software because I have a question, but that question and the answer that the system gives me is going to prompt me 2 or 3 different other questions. As a designer, I should design the system to answer the first question that you look for, but also give you quick access to the other ones. How do you map that out in atomic design, those level of interaction or that workflow mapping, if you will?
Well, I actually think that we don't actually do that in atomic design. We really more do that at the implementation level, right? There might be instances where we would have a template that would say handle like a decision tree or a series of questions like you mentioned. But really what we would look at is, do our atomic elements meet the need to create this page? If not, is it a justifiable use case, right? Meaning, is it something necessary for the organization? And if it meets that criteria, then that's how we start extending the library, right? Based on need and not by, like I said, feature fixation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. Taking the example that you started with, the one from LinkedIn, I definitely understand, the atoms and molecules and the progression to the pages, but where is the decision process that takes the designer to know, all right, you're going to put a home icon at the bottom, you're going to put a add connection, another icon, and so on and so forth. After the system is built and you track utilization, it's somewhat easier, right? But at the beginning, when you start from scratch and when you're doing discovery, I'm a bit curious on how you tackle that process. Yeah.
Well, it's hard work. Like the actual kind of UX work doesn't go away, right? You need to do your, we follow design thinking where we would do empathy sessions, right? Understand user need, understand what business goals are, understand what use cases we're trying to solve, right? And that's why, I've said it, the work is never done. Design systems always evolve and change, right? And really, this is more of a way to ease the pain that, you would typically see in managing a system, because it's modular, it allows you to expand, it allows for creativity, and it allows for many different concatenations.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. We've got another question in from the chat. Let's see. How do you make a decision with your atomic design? How do you validate your component designs are feasible? Usability test, and how do you conduct those if your audiences are in different fields?
So I guess the conducting, we definitely do a lot of usability testing. I think, you know, you have to make some assumptions, right, in terms of what is needed for the user, but you need to validate that, right? Because user experience comes down to kind of marrying not only what user needs, but for the business goal, especially within enterprise solutions. The lucky thing within enterprises, typically most of them have brands, so they might have, say, existing components or brand, you know, guidelines that help drive what components are needed. But again, similar to the answer I gave Ricardo, this is really kind of one piece of the design ops toolbox, right? It's about a more efficient way to get your designers going on working on those solutions without having to, say, recreate the wheel every time. Did I hit all the points there, Josh? Because I think about like 3-part question.
Yeah, it was a 3-part question. That was from Matt. If you have any other things to add to that, Matt, please feel free to use the chat function in there. He said that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
We've got a couple other questions. Let's see. How many people does it take to maintain the design system?
You keep setting me up with all these questions, guys, where my first answer is going to be, well, it depends. I would say at bare minimum, what we've seen is that we typically have at least one dedicated UX resource and one dedicated UI resource. But based upon where you are in the progression, you know, if you're just starting out and building one from scratch, it could be as high as, say, 3 or 4 UX personnel. But in terms of if you're a little bit more matured, you definitely need a minimum of 1 person to maintain that. And that's a full-time job.
All right. I think we've got time for one more. Have you faced issues maintaining the design system across different technologies? Example, Sketch and XD?
That's a great question. So being that we are a consulting company and we, you know, typically step into large organizations to help them with these types of projects, we've seen examples where we're working with internal design teams that might be split across 2 different technologies. And in this case, it was actually Sketch and XD. What we had to do was really create the same design system across both technologies. This was not what we recommended, but it was really what the client required. When we're in situations like that, we actually went with Sketch as our golden source, and XD would trail maybe by, you know, a minor version, but we do always keep them in sync. So that's a really great question. Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be to utilize a singular technology, but sometimes that's not always viable.
All right, cool, thank you. All right, well, that's all the questions that we have time for today.
That was great. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time.
Great, thank you, Matt.
Appreciate it.